A woman with a clipboard walked up and told him to move his boat. Loud, proud, and sure she was in charge. What she didn't know was that the man she was talking to owned the whole lake, and her fishing club's days were numbered. It was just past 7 in the morning when Clarence Rucker backed his truck into the gravel lot at Mayfield Lake, just outside Springfield, Missouri. The sun hadn't climbed above the trees yet, and the water was calm and still. Clarence, 47, had been waiting for this day for weeks. He'd spent the night getting his old aluminum boat ready. Quiet, peaceful, just him, a thermos of coffee, and the lake his father once took him to as a boy. He was unhooking the trailer when he heard quick footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw her. Mid-50s, short blonde hair, sunglasses already on her head even though the sun was low. She held a clipboard like it was a badge of power and wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't park that here," she said sharply. Clarence blinked. "I'm sorry." "This lot is private," she said, walking closer. "Community use only. You need to move that boat." Clarence put down his wrench and stood up. "Morning. You live here?" "I'm on the HOA board," she said proudly. "And you're not on the list of lake users. This lake is for the Mayfield Hills Fishing Club. You're trespassing." Clarence looked toward the water. No one else was around. "Didn't see a sign." "There's one near the pavilion," she replied flatly. "You must have missed it." "I've fished here plenty of times," he said. "Never had a problem." "Well, you've got one now," she snapped. "Either move your boat or I'll call this in. What's your name?" he asked. "Teresa Holcomb," she said, standing taller. "And yours?" "Clarence Rucker." She wrote it down. "That boat registered to you?" "It is." "Well, Mr. Rucker," she said with a fake smile, "you can't just show up and dump your boat wherever you want. We've had problems with people before, leaving trash, breaking things. This area is for residents and their guests." Clarence stayed calm, but he felt the edge in her tone. The way she said people made him uneasy. "I'm not breaking anything," he said. "Just trying to enjoy the water." "You need to pack up and leave, now." He looked at the lake, then back at her. "You sure you want to push this?" "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. "You might want to check your facts," he said quietly. "You're mistaken about who owns this lake." She laughed. "Is that supposed to scare me? Do you know how long I've lived here?" Clarence didn't move. "Do you know who bought this lake 3 years ago? Who maintains it, pays taxes on it, and allows your fishing club to be here in the first place?" For a moment her face changed, a flicker of doubt, but it vanished fast. "You're bluffing," she said. Clarence clipped the line back on the trailer. "All right, do what you have to do." "I will," she said. "You'll be hearing from the board." But Clarence wasn't bluffing. And Teresa had just picked the wrong man to argue with. By 9 o'clock, Clarence was already on the water, drifting quietly near the reeds. The morning air was cool and still. He wasn't in a rush, just enjoying the calm. But it didn't last long. A white golf cart rolled up near the dock. Even from a distance he knew who it was, Teresa Holcomb. But this time she had someone with her. A man in a windbreaker with a radio on his belt, probably security. They stopped at the edge of the dock. Teresa planted her feet like she was giving orders. "Clarence Rucker!" she shouted. "This is your final warning." Clarence reeled in his line, turned his chair, and waved. "Morning again, Teresa." "I've called the sheriff," she yelled. "You're in violation of HOA rules. You need to leave immediately." The man beside her looked unsure. He leaned in, whispered, but she waved him off. Clarence stayed seated. "That man with you, got a badge or just a walkie-talkie?" "You don't need to worry about that," she said. "Well," Clarence called back, "if you're going to accuse someone of trespassing on private land, you might want to make sure you're not the one trespassing first." The young guard spoke up. "Sir, what's your business here?" "I'm fishing," Clarence said simply. "Are you a resident?" "No." "Then I need you to come ashore." Clarence didn't move. "You ever hear of Crescent Holdings?" The guard frowned. "No, sir." "They're a private trust," Clarence said. "Bought this land and the lake 3 years ago." "I'm the trustee," Teresa scoffed. "You really expect us to believe that?" Clarence smiled. Doesn't matter if you do. The paperwork's on file with Greene County. You can look it up right now. The guard hesitated, then asked, Do you have ID? In the truck, Clarence said. I'll need to see it. I'll show it to a deputy when they get here, Clarence replied. That's who you called, right? The guard looked uneasy. Teresa crossed her arms. This lake has been part of our community for decades, she said. Just because some company buys it doesn't mean you own it. Ma'am, Clarence said calmly, I didn't come looking for trouble. You came to me. Her face turned red. Fine, let the sheriff handle it. Clarence leaned back and cast his line again. Not looking for sympathy. Just some quiet, but Teresa couldn't let it go. Because this wasn't about a boat. It was about control. And she was losing it. Later that afternoon, Clarence packed up and drove home. The sun was hot, and the silence in his truck felt good. He wasn't angry, just thoughtful. The lake meant something to him. His house sat 10 minutes away down a quiet country road. A small green house with white trim. Simple and lived in. His dog, Jasper, barked once as he pulled in. Clarence smiled and waved but didn't stay outside long. Inside, he kicked off his boots, dropped his keys on the hook, and picked up an old framed photo. His father stood by the lake, barefoot, holding a fish and grinning from ear to ear. Clarence, maybe 10 years old, stood beside him. Jeans dirty, teeth crooked, smiling big. Dad, he said softly, you'd have handled her better than I did. He poured a glass of iced tea, sat at the kitchen table and let the quiet fill the room. Calm, steady, and peaceful. Just like the lake. Clarence sat still for a long moment, thinking about Teresa. The way she looked at him, the confidence in her voice when she wrote down his name like he was an intruder. She never asked who he was. She just assumed. Finally, he stood, walked to the filing cabinet, and pulled out a blue folder labeled Mayfield Lake Title and Access. Inside was everything he needed. The deed, signatures, agreements. The lake wasn't public, never had been. It was part of his father's trust, and while the neighborhood had always been allowed access out of kindness, that courtesy had long been taken for granted. Clarence sighed. He didn't want to act out of anger, but this wasn't just about one rude woman. It was about respect. He called Mr. Lang, an old lawyer friend, to confirm the documents. Yeah, Clarence said, it's time to take a closer look at who's been taking advantage of what my father left behind. On Monday, he went to the county recorder's office. Everything checked out. The lake, the dock, the land, all legally his. No shared rights, no easements. Driving home, Clarence decided to make it official. At his desk, he typed a letter to the Homeowners Association. Calm, professional, and clear. He stated that access to the lake was suspended until further notice due to the lapse of renewal. No anger, no threats, just facts. He printed it, sealed it in an envelope, and dropped it off at the HOA office himself. Make sure Teresa gets it, he told the receptionist. That evening, Clarence sat on his porch as the sun set. For the first time in days, he felt at peace, until his phone rang. It was Ron Castile, the HOA president. We got your letter, Ron said. Maybe we can talk this out. Clarence replied evenly, There's nothing to talk about. The agreement wasn't renewed. Ron hesitated. Revoking access might upset some residents. Clarence smiled faintly. Then maybe they'll learn some humility. By Wednesday, the quiet neighborhood was buzzing. Emails, phone calls, and whispers followed him everywhere. Some were angry, others apologetic. At the hardware store, an older man named Billy Waller shook his hand. Not everyone agrees with Teresa, he said. She thinks she runs this place. Clarence nodded. I've noticed. But not all encounters were friendly. Someone even slipped a flyer into his mailbox. Bold letters reading, Local man revokes community lake access. The calm before the storm was over, and Clarence knew the fight was just beginning. Clarence stood on his porch, reading the flyer with the headline, Retaliation or Power Grab. It accused him of using his power against the community, calling his actions disruptive and unnecessary. There was no name on it, but Clarence already knew who wrote it. He shook his head and set it aside. That evening, he walked Jasper down the gravel path to the lake. A couple stood near the water watching him quietly. They didn't speak, just stared as he passed. Back home, Clarence sat on the porch and watched the sunset. He wasn't looking for trouble, but it was clear now people didn't like being reminded that the lake was a privilege, not a right. The next morning, a woman named Andrea Preston called. She was new to the HOA board. "I just want to apologize," she said. "Teresa doesn't speak for everyone." Clarence replied calmly, "That's good to hear." Andrea went on, "Some board members want to reverse your decision. Others want to renegotiate." Clarence said, "I'm not interested in negotiating. I'm interested in respect." By Friday, tension filled the neighborhood. Copies of Clarence's letter had spread everywhere, by email, at BBQs, even on walks. Inside the HOA office, Teresa stood at the head of the table, angry and silent. Ron, the president, said quietly, "He's within his rights." Teresa snapped, "He's making a point." Andrea replied, "No, he's asking for respect. The agreement expired. That's on us." Meanwhile, Clarence was at the lake, checking damage and trash left behind. A truck slowed beside him. It was Billy Waller. "You sure you want to stir things up?" he asked. Clarence didn't look up. "Didn't stir anything. Just stopped letting people walk through my yard like they own it." That afternoon, the HOA sent an official notice. Access to Mayfield Lake is suspended until further review. By evening, the neighborhood was in chaos. People argued online, rumors spread, and some even claimed Clarence planned to sell the lake. That night, Andrea came by his porch. "There's a meeting next week," she said. "Will you come speak? They've only heard Teresa's version." Clarence nodded slowly. "All right, I'll come." The meeting drew the biggest crowd the HOA had seen in years. Clarence stood near the front, calm and steady, no papers in hand. Teresa sat in the first row, glaring. Ron spoke first, asking for respect, then invited Clarence to talk. Clarence looked around the room. "My father brought me to this lake when I was 10, he said. "Before any of this existed. I kept it open for everyone because I trusted people to respect it. But when someone tells you to leave your own property, that's not about rules. That's about dignity." A woman said, "She didn't know who you were." Clarence answered, "She didn't ask." The room fell silent. "This isn't about punishment," he continued. "It's about accountability. You've used something that doesn't belong to you, without care or respect. I didn't want this to happen, but I won't apologize for asking to be treated like a person." The silence was heavy. Then Teresa stood up, her voice sharp. "Why didn't you just come to us?" she asked, her voice tight. "Why go straight to shutting everyone out?" Clarence looked her straight in the eye. "You came to me first, remember? On the dock, with a clipboard and a threat." She opened her mouth to respond, but didn't. Slowly, she sat back down. Ron stepped forward. "We're going to open discussion now. No shouting, keep it constructive." Several hands shot up. An older man in a fishing hat said, "I don't care who owns what. That lake is part of this neighborhood's life. Kids have grown up on it." Clarence replied evenly, "Then maybe the neighborhood should care enough to respect the person who's kept it open all this time." Another woman asked, "Would you consider renewing the agreement if the HOA handled maintenance and put real guidelines in place?" Clarence didn't answer right away. He could feel the weight in the room. They weren't just mad anymore. They were listening. "I'll consider it," he said finally. "But I'm not rushing. Not until folks understand that this isn't just land. It's personal." As the meeting wound down, Clarence knew one thing. Respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned. And he'd just made them think about how little they'd offered. The following days were quiet. No more flyers, no anonymous calls, no teenagers sneaking in to fish. The same lake that had caused so much noise now reflected only trees and sky. Clarence didn't expect an apology from Teresa Holcomb, and he didn't get one. But she stepped back. No more accusations. No more standoffs. Word spread that she'd resigned from the HOA board to focus on personal matters. Everyone knew why. On Saturday morning, Clarence returned to the dock with a toolbox and a bucket of paint. Jasper trotted beside him, tail wagging. The benches were busted, the fence still loose, but Clarence wasn't bitter. He wanted to fix it, not for the neighborhood, but for himself, for his father. Midway through replacing a plank, he heard footsteps behind him. Need a hand? He turned. Andrea Preston stood there in jeans and sneakers, sleeves rolled up, holding a drill. Clarence nodded toward the bench. "You know how to work that thing?" "I do," she grinned. "You wouldn't believe how much HOA paperwork I fixed with this drill last year." Clarence chuckled and motioned to the bench. "Be my guest." They worked quietly. Andrea didn't fill the silence with small talk, and Clarence appreciated that. After 20 minutes, she said, "You know, a lot of people in the neighborhood want to make things right." Clarence didn't look up. "Takes more than good intentions." "I know," she said. "That's why I've been talking to the new board. We're drafting a revised agreement. Maintenance schedules, cleanup days, proper oversight." He paused, then looked at her. "No more clipboards and threats?" "No more," she promised. "And any violations? They'll be handled internally. You won't be bothered." Clarence nodded slowly. "I'll read it when it's ready." Later that day, another surprise came. Billy Waller showed up with his grandson, Lucas, a teen holding a trash bag and gloves. "We figured we'd help out," Billy said. "Might not fix everything, but it's a start." Clarence just handed the boy a rake. "Start with the trail." By sundown, the dock looked new again. The benches were solid, the path clear. For the first time since all this began, Clarence felt something shift. Not just around him, but in the people too. At church the next morning, a few nodded as he walked in. One woman whispered, "That lake's lucky to have you." After the service, a man approached. "You're Clarence, right? My kid caught his first fish there last summer. I never got the chance to thank you." Clarence didn't need the thanks, but it meant something, because it came freely, not forced. That night, walking Jasper along the trail, Clarence thought about his father, the smell of grass, the sound of water, the stillness of morning. His father used to say, "People don't know the value of something until it's nearly gone." He understood that now. A week later, Clarence stood at the edge of Mayfield Lake. The air was cool, the sunrise soft on the water. He didn't bring a fishing rod. He didn't need it. In a folder under his arm was the new access agreement. Fair rules, maintenance schedules, and clear respect for what the lake represented. He hadn't done it for control or for an apology. He did it because letting people walk over something precious changes you. And he wasn't going to let that happen. When he returned to sign the papers, Andrea smiled. "We're going to do better." Clarence nodded. "I'll hold you to that." As he left, a group of teenagers near the bulletin board went quiet. One of them stepped forward, awkward but sincere. "Mr. Rucker? My dad said you fixed the dock. Said I should thank you." Clarence smiled. "Just take care of it." "We will," the boy said. Walking back to his truck, Clarence felt a quiet peace. Not from winning, but from being understood. He thought about that first confrontation, about Teresa and her clipboard. He hadn't yelled or fought, he stood firm, and that was enough. The lake had taught him something. Respect isn't demanded. It's lived, quietly, steadily, until others see it for themselves. And maybe, just maybe, by standing still, you make enough noise for change. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real, human stories, the kind that remind us what respect really means.